story tonight. Just 2 days before a full House vote on whether to place Attorney General Eric Holder in contempt of Congress, new charges tonight in the intensifying war of words with the White House. In a blistering letter to the president, House Oversight Chairman Darrell Issa directly accusing Obama of involvement in Fast and Furious operation, saying, and I quote, "Either you or your most senior advisors were involved in managing Operation Fast and Furious and the fallout from it." And he went on to say, and I quote some more, "Or you are asserting a presidential power that you know to be unjustified solely for the purpose of further obstructing a congressional investigation." All right, tough stuff. Here now we have House Oversight members Dennis Kucinich, Democrat from Ohio, and Joe Walsh, Republican from Illinois. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Joe Walsh, does this have the sense of a cover-up? Does the White House order of executive privilege seek to obstruct a legitimate congressional oversight function?
Absolutely, Larry, and it's good to be with you. Look, I think Chairman Issa got it just right. For the president to exert executive privilege at the last minute like he did last week, it's odd and it's troubling, and Chairman Issa nailed it. Look, we've been told for almost a year now that the president had no awareness or involvement in Fast and Furious. Eric Holder has said he's had no involvement or awareness, and Eric Holder also told us he had no communications with the president regarding Fast and Furious. So for him to exert executive privilege right now tells us he either was involved or was aware of it, or as Chairman Issa said, he's purposely using this to get in the way of an investigation. Either scenario is pretty troubling.
I mean, Dennis Kucinich, look, I want to make this as simple as possible. If senior White House people were aware of Fast and Furious from Justice Department people, if senior White House people know, they can, in fact, claim executive privilege, but they're eventually going to be faced with some kind of independent prosecutor. On the other hand, Dennis, if this is a Justice Department matter alone and the White House is not involved, then this executive privilege call is wrong. It'll never pass the federal courts, and there should be a contempt of Congress aimed at Eric Holder. Those are the two choices, Dennis, that I see.
No, actually, my friend, Mr. Walsh, and you, my friend, you're both wrong. Just because there's an invoking of executive privilege doesn't mean the president's implicated in doing anything wrong. So there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of executive privilege here. Listen, I'm a member of Congress. I'm a member of the committee. I want Congress's power to be able to get protected. But we also have to recognize that the president does have the ability to be able to claim executive privilege without in any way coloring a question of implication.
See, I don't disagree. I think in order to explore that issue, we're going to have a special prosecutor if it ever came to that. But Joe Walsh, what I want to go back to is inside the Justice Department, and this letter from February 2011, which was a false assertion that they didn't know. Joe, inside the Justice Department, you can't just call executive privilege because there's a legitimate oversight function of the committee run by Mr. Issa, yourself, and others. That's legitimate. You can't block out evidence and discussions of that. That's not what executive privilege is all about inside an agency.
No, and you're right, Larry. An executive privilege goes away when there's any evidence of a cover-up. The executive privilege that the president's exerted here refers to deliberative documents, not documents that showed a communication necessarily between officials and the president. But when there is evidence of government misconduct, executive privilege, according to referring to deliberative documents, disappears. And look, Obama, Holder, Cummings on oversight, they've all said there was clearly misconduct in Fast and Furious. So executive privilege just doesn't apply here.
What are they covering up?
Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute.
What are they hiding, Dennis Kucinich? This is what I don't understand. We know now...
You don't understand it because there's no evidence there is a cover-up.
Incorrect. We know that Mr. Holder has changed his whole line. We now know that senior officials in the Department of Justice were aware of Fast and Furious. What I want to know is, what are they holding back? You can't have executive privilege to escape the normal oversight function functions of this committee. That is not what executive privilege is. And that isn't any executive function that Holder tried to use when he was working for Clinton. You have to come clean, Dennis. Why aren't they coming clean?
Well, you know what? This line of questioning is repugnant because the fact of the matter is, even Chairman Issa on Chris Wallace's show on Fox went and said, look, there's no evidence there was a cover-up at the White House. That's what he said this a couple of days ago. So what are we, in Alice in Wonderland? First the verdict and then the evidence?
Cover-up in the Justice Department. I am leaving the White House alone for a minute. I'm leaving the White House alone.
We don't know there's a cover-up.
What I'm saying is the White House is trying to throw an executive privilege blanket over the Justice Department.
A screw-up is different than a cover-up.
And the Justice Department should be subjected to the investigative authority of the Oversight Committee. This is the part I don't get.
Listen, I was chairman of an investigative subcommittee. If I want evidence and information, I try to get it, okay? But you cannot convict someone in headlines or accuse someone of covering something up unless you have real proof. Even Chairman Issa isn't asserting a cover-up in the White House. And with respect to the Department of Justice, we don't have any evidence yet of anything that's being covered up. I said it a moment ago. Was there a screw-up? Yes. A cover-up? I don't think so.
Well, Joe Walsh, there's about 7,000 documents that haven't been handed over yet to Chairman Issa and the committee, so that suspects something. And also, I want to ask you now, as you may have heard this afternoon, the NRA, the National Rifle Association, has made this contempt vote one of their key votes. Democrats are going to walk away. Is this contempt going to pass tomorrow or Thursday? Is it a sure thing in your judgment?
Well, I hope it's not a sure thing that we'll even have the vote. I hope that Eric Holder provides the documents that we're looking for. Look, we forget this fact. Brian Terry, a Border Control agent, was killed 18 months ago. His family and the country still don't have answers as to what happened, who knew what at Justice, and Eric Holder has not cooperated in this investigation at all. That's all we're trying to do.
So you're saying, let me just get this right, Joe Walsh, just the end here. You're saying it's still possible in the next 24 hours or so that the contempt citation will be unnecessary and that the executive privilege will be unnecessary because a deal can be made and Holder can talk to Issa and whomever and provide the right documentation. Is that still a possibility?
Yeah, no deal can be. I mean, I'm not talking about a deal. I'm talking about Eric Holder turning over the documents that the committee's requested that will give us the answers that both Dennis and I want.
Gentlemen, I know you got to go and vote. I appreciate it. House Oversight Committee members Dennis Kucinich and Joe Walsh. Thank you very much.
Executive privilege means doesn't necessarily mean there's something to hide.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it very much.
Good to see you.
All right, there you have it. Now, coming up on Kudlow, stocks find something of a foundation.